As I said at the top of the program, we're going to focus this week on early childhood education. If you recall last week's Edlines, I mentioned a new study that found early childhood education leads to higher test scores, a lower chance of being held back in a grade, and fewer number of children with special ed placements, and that those benefits last longer than previously thought. Joining us for our first segment is the primary author of that study, Dr. Kenneth Dodge. He is the William Dougal Professor of Public Policy and Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience at Duke University, and the founder of the Center for Child and Family Policy. Thanks for being here, Ken.
Thank you for having me.
Now, one of the things that really drew me to your study when I saw the reports and saw that it came out was that you were talking about and studying North Carolina children. This wasn't some abstract group of kids from across the country. You were actually looking at our kids. Tell us what you found and sort of how you did it.
Yeah, that's right. There are programs all over the country, and the programs differ. We wanted to know how North Carolina's programs have an impact on children. As you said earlier, North Carolina has two nationally known programs, Smart Start, which is directed toward children birth to age 5, and NC Pre-K, formerly Mort 4, which is a year of pre-kindergarten. These two programs have been in place for the past 20 years in North Carolina, but they have been funded at different levels and have been rolled out at different times in different communities in different years, depending on budgets and that sort of thing. Well, we took advantage, my colleagues and I took advantage of that fact to ask the question of whether the money makes a difference. If you were lucky enough to be born in a county in a year when your county got more of this funding for Smart Start or NC Pre-K, did you benefit? We found by examining large amounts of administrative data on over 1 million children in North Carolina over the past 20 years that indeed each of these programs has a positive impact. And unlike programs in other states, some other states, the impacts on North Carolina's children last at least through the end of elementary school.
Now, you mentioned something in that answer, which we've actually explored on this show before when you said about children lucky enough to be born in a county.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in North Carolina, there are, in many cases, 2 North Carolinas, and there are things that children have access to in some parts of the state and that they don't have in others. But you found that children who had quality childhood education benefited tremendously. I mean, what are the key takeaways or how they benefited? What are the things specifically?
Right. We examined 4 important educational outcomes. Children's standardized reading achievement test scores all the way through the end of elementary school by the end of grade 5. Math standardized achievement test scores. Grade retention, that is failing a grade or being forced to repeat a grade, and placement into special education for learning disabilities, behavior problems, whatever the cause might be. And on each of those 4 measures, if you were lucky enough to be born in a county that received a large amount of funding for one of these programs, your outcomes were better. About a half a year of learning improvement, which is a substantial amount.
And the benefits lasted further than maybe previously thought. We've got a slide we're going to pull up on the screen. This is something that was from your report. You talk about how the really shows a gain of impact across the years.
That's right. One of the concerns that got raised in evaluations from other states was that perhaps these positive impacts faded out over time and really wasn't a good long-term investment. So we were very keen on observing whether the impacts lasted in grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. And what the slide shows is that for all of the measures, the impacts not only are sustained, but actually slightly grow, so that by the end of 5th grade, it's over a half a year of learning advantage for children who have benefited from these programs.
Oh, that's obviously a tremendous improvement. Now, did you see any differences when you looked at the children served in terms of some socioeconomic? I mean, were children from poor families, did they benefit more, less, the same?
Right. We did examine different subgroups because that's a very important question. And we found that for each of the subgroups that we examined, the effects are positive and last. They're strongest for the children from the lowest income backgrounds, which is really good news because it means that these programs have the potential to close that achievement gap. And they close the gap without any kind of disadvantage or suffering from the middle income children. They gain from these programs as well.
Right. Now in our next segment we're going to talk to a couple of leaders in early childhood education, but you looked at the 2 primary programs, so it wasn't just NC Pre-K, you looked at Smart Start. So we're really talking about birth to 5 and the year before school, right?
That's right, and we found that each of those programs has a positive impact and they supplement each other. You can't substitute one program for the other. What we're learning is we really need a birth to age 8 or birth to adulthood approach to education, and that each of these programs has a positive impact, and the best impact is if you're benefiting from both of the programs.
You know, we were chatting before we started rolling about the sort of how public education in general has changed over
Yes.
our lifetimes, our parents' lifetime. You know, it used to be, you know, eight years of education was enough, and then we said 10, 12. Should we be thinking about going the other way?
Absolutely. So when public education began in America about 175 years ago, the best thinkers at that time assumed that learning didn't begin till age 7. That was the age of reason. And we thought what we did for our children before that age really made no difference at all. Well, learning from developmental science, brain science, has told us that brain development is maximized during early life. And so now we've moved to adding kindergarten. Now there's a move to add pre-kindergarten, and absolutely we should start at birth, if not before, in how we take care of our children.
Now you've obviously studied early childhood education, but have you ever seen anything like this in terms of this kind of sort of consistent benefit from any kind of education intervention? I mean, this is pretty remarkable.
What's remarkable about it is that these positive impacts are occurring for scaled up programs at state levels. So historically there have been small programs. The famous Abecedarian program out of Frank Porter Graham Child Development Center at UNC Chapel Hill is wonderful, but it served only 100 children. We're talking about programs that are statewide, and so it shows that we can do it, even if we implement it at this large scale.
Well, we appreciate you being here and appreciate your study, and the viewers can go online and actually we'll have a link to the full study and some other news stories about it, so thank you. But when we come back, we'll be joined by two of our state's leading experts on early childhood programs in North Carolina. But first, as we go to break, see if you can answer this question. What percentage of 4-year-olds in North Carolina are enrolled in pre-K?